Today, we come here in this church. We come here as God's people, people of faith, to spend this time together in memory, but most of all, reaffirming our faith, and God willing, recommitting ourselves to the task at hand. The opening prayer of our Mass said just a few moments ago, addressed God, our Creator, and stated that we give thanks to Him, who alone has the power to impart the breath of life as He formed each one of us and everyone in their mother's womb. That is our faith, that God is the giver of life, the gift of life, the most fundamental right that individuals have comes directly from God Himself. And yet, 40 years ago began in a systematic and, God forbid, but in a legal way, to begin to whittle away at the sacredness of life, which we have seen over these 40 years continue to be an assault on human life. Even though God is the author of it all, the human life of every person from the moment of their conception, for they bear the image and the likeness of God. Thankfully, Catholics, other believers, and people of goodwill continue their efforts, which we will see later this week in our nation's capital, where literally from around our country, many will gather to make it known that what was done 40 years ago is not embraced by large numbers of Americans. People who either see on a natural level or a spiritual level the wrongness of what has transpired. We, by our coming here this evening, a fierce, cold night notwithstanding, we come here to be with one another, to pray for an end of this scourge that mars our very being as a nation, and to pledge ourselves to continue to work towards its being overcome. For isn't that what the second part of that opening prayer leads us to reflect on? Where it says, "We, whom you have made stewards of creation, that we may remain faithful to that trust and constant in safeguarding the dignity of every human person." None of us can excuse ourselves from our role, the role that Almighty God has entrusted to us to struggle for and to not give up until the dignity of every person is recognized and acknowledged, so that these happenings over these past 40 years may end. Abortion is not one issue among many, my dear friends. No, it takes precedence over every other issue, as it is so evil, so heinous, and most of all, so absolutely against the law of God Himself. This is so because it attacks person's most fundamental right, who at the same time are the most vulnerable and most defenseless. It needs to end, and end not in a distant time, but much quicker. My dear friends, every one of us has opportunities and times when we can make statements by our actions. And I'd like to share the story of a man who, a little over 70 years ago, showed the conviction of his conscience. In 1941, a German bishop, his name was Gustav von Galen, from the Diocese of Munster in Germany, he gave a homily condemning the Nazi officials for terminating the lives of the mentally ill people. He said, "Thou shalt not kill." God wrote this commandment in the conscience of man long before any penal code laid down the penalty for murder, long before any prosecutor or any court was called to investigate and avenge. Cain, who killed his brother Abel, was a murderer long before there were any states or any courts of law. One might say, should he have opposed the war and remained silent about the murder of the mentally ill? Bishop von Galen said, "No person of conscience can fail to understand and do nothing." My dear friends, we know that we are called to treasure the gift that God has given everyone, including those not yet born. Tonight we come here to pray, but also to recommit ourselves so that we, with others, can courageously move in a direction to help other people see the harm that is done. Harm that is done to so many, not just the unborn, but also to those who choose this as a way of action. And it impoverishes our own country that we do not have the benefit of those who have been aborted to make their contribution along with us in making our country better. Every one of us suffers from the reality and the actuality of abortion taking place. Today, we will conclude Mass with a prayer just before the blessing. And I ask us to think about this as we continue our prayer to God. Increase your love within you so that we may bring people everywhere to respect your gift of human love and human life. May God bless us all as we commit ourselves to the respect and the dignity of every person, so that God may be praised and humankind may be strengthened morally and spiritually, thus responding graciously to all in our midst. May God bless us all as we strive to follow the way of God in our lives, in our communities, and throughout the United States.